Mount Shasta is big. I'm not sure if it's big enough to host 1.5 million 9-foot beings.
Yeah, but maybe they just stand there. I don't know if they have little houses in there, or I mean,
You would think if they're that advanced, maybe they've gone really far down into the earth. They got all the tunnels and that. Yeah, so life could be good down in Telos. I don't know.
Hey, I'm Josh Meyers, the new host of the California Now podcast. We've got a fantastic season ahead. We're going to be talking to California experts who will share the wild and wonderful things that make the Golden State great, from Bigfoot to Big Sur. For our first episode, we're going to get a little spooky. A Sasquatch in the Redwoods, a UFO in the desert, a long-lost civilization of ancient beings living in a mountain. Believe it or not, these stories are woven into California culture. We'll start this episode by chatting with Zach O'Brien from Active NorCal magazine about the mysteries of Northern California.
Northern California is the unofficial home of Bigfoot.
And then we delve into some truly out-of-this-world tales from the California desert with Ken Layne, author and host of the Desert Oracle radio show.
If you go out alone into these sorts of places, you're much more likely to have oddball experiences.
Legends and lore galore. That's all coming up on California Now. Bigfoot, Lemurians, secret mountain societies. Northern California isn't just home to towering trees and scenic hikes. It also boasts some of the wildest legends around. Today we're getting into all of it. The lore, the mysteries, and the history too. Helping us make sense of it all is Zach O'Brien, founder of Active NorCal, a digital publication that covers outdoor adventures, local culture, and yes, plenty of NorCal's strangest stories. Zach, thanks for joining me here on California Now.
Thanks for having me, Josh. Glad to be here.
It is a delight. I spent my morning on your website, which is just so full of information about interesting goings on in Northern California, and then also some of these incredible stories about these myths and these legends. And we're going to get to sort of a possible ancient society living inside of Mount Shasta. We'll leave that for a second, but as a tease to our listeners, let's just start with the region in general. It is such a draw to sort of a new age society, new age culture. What do you think it is about the area that makes it so interesting to people who are interested in that kind of stuff?
Oh, well, it's so hard to explain to someone because really it's just a feel. As soon as you get into these different areas of Northern California, be it the Mount Shasta area, the Redwoods of Northern California, Lake Tahoe, there's a feeling there that is palpable, and so much can run in your imagination when you see these places. I talk to a lot of, Mount Shasta is a big area for meditation tours. And you talk to a lot of these people who lead the tours or people who go on the tours, and there's just a palpable feeling of an energy on the mountain. So however that has manifested into these stories and legends today, I'm not quite sure. But when you actually visit the areas, you can certainly feel the draw to these different outdoor destinations.
Yeah, it is that vibe. And I regretfully have still not visited your region, but in my research for this episode, I am desperate to. And there's so many great things to do up there, but the geography alone is fascinating. I mean, that Mount Shasta just sort of comes up out of this, not necessarily even a mountain range. It's sort of, it's relatively flat around it. You've got a lake with some of the coolest caverns in the world. Can you talk about sort of the geographical wonders in the area?
Well, you nailed it on the head. Mount Shasta, it's 14,000 feet tall, and it seems to come out of nowhere. In fact, John Muir famously wrote the first time he saw it from over 100 miles away, he said his blood turned to wine. On a clear day, you can see it from over 100 miles away from the valley of Northern California. So it's sort of I like to call it sort of our North Star. You can see it from so many different regions of Northern California, and so it's kind of the centerpiece. I like to say. So yeah, the area is actually all impacted by the mountain. So when snow falls on Mount Shasta, the water sits in the mountain for about 50 years, and then it gushes out into the Sacramento River. And the Sacramento River flows down into the valley and hits Shasta Dam, where it creates Shasta Lake, California's largest lake. And then, of course, Sacramento River flows all the way into the San Francisco Bay. But the mountain is so big and so powerful when it comes to, different weather events that it really impacts so much of the region. We talk a lot about water usage in California and water storage, and Mount Shasta is a big part of all of that. But yeah, like you said, there's caves all over the place, which is this. A lot of them are from either volcanic or geologic abnormalities. And it all sort of stems from this volcanic area, which is both Lassen Peak and Lassen Volcanic National Park and Mount Shasta, which are in total part of the Ring of Fire, the famous Ring of Fire on the planet. So the region itself is very heavily affected by these volcanic and geologic abnormalities.
Yeah, and I read the last sort of eruption was in the 1700s, I want to say. Does that feel right?
So they're not entirely sure when it last erupted. There are people, there are anecdotal stories of people saying that they saw it erupt in the 1600s to 1700s. Now, if you're familiar with Mount Shasta, there are what we call lenticular clouds that float above the mountain. So if you're traveling around the area in, say, the 1700s, and you see these big clouds forming over the mountain, you might assume that it's erupting. So all we really have is the anecdotal claims that it erupted, but no actual scientific evidence that it has. And in fact, a lot of geologists believe it's overdue to erupt again.
So you grew up in the area. When did you first start hearing sort of stories about legends about Bigfoot or Lemurians? And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Lemurians.
Lemurians, thank you.
Yeah, these legends, I think, I grew up in a pre-internet time. I grew up in the town of Redding, which is just about 70 miles south of Mount Shasta. And pre-internet, everything's word of mouth. So you might hear these stories about Bigfoot or these beings in Mount Shasta from a weird friend of yours, but you don't put much credence into it. So I did start hearing about this stuff when I was younger, but I think it really started taking off when people started writing about it on the internet.
Yeah. Is that what sort of brought you to writing about them? Sort of just the internet sort of coming around and sort of seeing that there is a hunger for these kinds of stories and explanations of the myth and the legends?
As a writer who had this media company, when I looked at a blank page some days, I'm like, man, what am I going to write about? And Lemurians just kept coming up and kept coming up. So I decided to do deep dives, and still to this day, it's one of the most read articles. The first article I did about Lemurians on our website, millions and millions of people have read it, and I think I was sort of, as the legend took off, my writings on it sort of took off. So honestly, I started writing about it because I had nothing better to write about. That blank page is tough to stare at. And then it took on a life of its own.
Yeah. So now in reading, which was maybe the article that you're saying millions of people have read, that I read this morning and was great. You certainly approached all of this with a skeptic's mind, but then sort of were like, well, let's find out. Like, what's the deal? What is the deal with these Lemurians? So who are they?
Well, according to legend, it's this ancient advanced civilization that was around the same time that Atlantis was around, the Atlanteans. And there was, there's conflicting stories about what actually happened, but something happened on the Earth during this time, and they decided to go underground. And this was all made famous by there in 1899. There was a book by Frederick Oliver called "A Dweller on Two Planets," and he really went into the specifics of how they went underground, and they've been there for thousands and thousands of years, and now they're under Mount Shasta.
Great. And what do they look like? If you encounter a Lemurian, how do you know?
So this is another part of the legend that differs, but the main theory is that these are these 9-foot tall blonde beings. They look like humans. They're just very tall, long blonde hair, and they wear robes. There have been some quote unquote modern day people who said they've seen them, and they all say they're these tall, almost Nordic looking people with blonde hair, 9 feet tall.
Gotcha. And they live in a mountain, so hopefully they have some tall ceilings in there.
It is the most voluminous mountain in California. It's very big from a volume standpoint, so it seems ridiculous that there's a city inside of it, but it is actually a very, very big mountain. So scientifically, I suppose you could say it makes sense that there's a city in there.
Yeah. And I did read the city is Telos or Telos?
Telos, yes.
Telos. My apologies to any Lemurians listening. I also read that originally there were 200,000 of them there, but now they're up to 1.5 million. So it's nice to hear that their population's growing.
Population's booming. Now Mount Shasta is big. I'm not sure if it's big enough to host 1.5 million 9-foot beings.
Yeah, but maybe they just stand there. Maybe they just stand around and that's all they need to do. I don't know. I don't know if they have little houses in there, or
you would think if they're that advanced, maybe they've gone really far down into the earth. They got all the tunnels and that. Yeah. So life could be good down in Telos. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if they're that advanced, I'm sure it's great down there. And people do, there are these caves. There are these sort of volcanic caves. I want to say is it Pluto's Cave is nearby?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Pluto's Cave.
So Pluto's Cave is it's on the north side of the mountain, and once you get just north of Mount Shasta, it turns into sort of this high desert region, right? Anything south of Mount Shasta has a lot of trees, and then you get just north of it, and it's high desert. And in this high desert, there is this giant lava tube that is 150, 200,000 years old. And it is massive. It is, when you step in there, the walls are 50 feet tall, right? And there's a lot of different historical figures that have been there. Native Americans used Pluto's Cave quite a bit, according to legend. John Muir wrote about Pluto's Cave. And what's interesting about it is, when you visit it, there's a series of tunnels that you can go into, and there's kind of a final tunnel, and it's huge. It's very, very tall. It's very big, but the further you go down there, the darker it gets. So, I've never ventured too far away because it's just terrifying as it gets pitch black the further you go in there. But it's big, and so part of the legend is these are the different volcanic tubes that you can enter the city through on land.
Amazing. And then if you were going to go into Pluto's Cave, do you need ropes and a helmet? Do you need full spelunking gear, or can you just walk into it?
You could just walk right into it. It's great. It's probably 20 to 30 minute drive from the city of Mount Shasta, 30 minutes. And no, you could just walk up to it. It's about a quarter mile hike to get to the cave. And then you could just walk through it as much as you want. It's quite magnificent, actually.
Until it gets too scary, and then you turn around.
Until it gets too scary. I'm sure there's plenty of modern people who have gone deep in there. I'm just not that brave. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that I would be either. And then the Lemurians, there's also a connection with crystals to the Lemurians. What's that all about?
Yes. So, if you ever visit the town of Mount Shasta, it's sort of this unique, funky little town. If you go through downtown Mount Shasta, there's crystal shops everywhere, and they have, they're selling crystals, they're selling funky rocks and robes and different books, Lemurian books and legend books. But a lot of people believe that you can communicate with the Lemurians through these crystals. And I cannot tell you the amount of people I've talked to, normal people that I've met just in social situations who have claimed to have experience with crystals up there. And what that is, I'm not sure. I have not had one. But the legend is that the crystals are used to communicate with Lemurians, and the city of Telos is just full of crystals. Apparently, I think they use it. The legend is they use it as some sort of energy source.
Is it that they glow? Is it that they are feeling something, or they hear something?
From what I'm told, it's a vibration, right? So a lady who I met, who didn't know who I was, she didn't know what I've written about, said a crystal started vibrating so hard that she fell over in the middle of a crystal shop in Mount Shasta. So it's some sort of vibration, and all the legends of people who have claimed to see these Lemurians say they speak on they don't verbally speak, they speak on some telepathic wave. So the idea is that these crystals help us speak in their quote unquote language.
If you were in the area, if you were around Mount Shasta and you wanted to go on a tour, are there things like that?
Yes, so there are a lot of spiritual tours, and they range quite a bit in terms of you can get the full Lemurian tour, right, from people who claim to know how to get there, or you could just do these meditative tours. A lot of them, you'll go through. There's an area called Panther Meadow on the mountain, which is it's gorgeous. Either way, it's a fun little hike either way. But these claims are that there's different hotspots on the mountain where you can either communicate with them or actually transport into the mountain itself. So there's a lot of what we call spiritual tourism. People come from all over the world to experience one of the legends of the mountain, which there are many.
All right. Well, speaking of legends, there's another one that I think everyone's a bit more familiar with, and that's Bigfoot. A lot of us know that legend. Do you call Bigfoot Bigfoot, or are you more of a Sasquatch guy?
It's just Bigfoot. It's just Bigfoot.
It's just Bigfoot. All right.
Yeah, Northern California is the unofficial home of Bigfoot. And, Bigfoot is obviously known around the world, and you'll hear a million different legends and stories about Bigfoot. But the most sightings to date have come in the top counties of Northern California, most specifically Humboldt County. It is well known. If you look up, say on YouTube, if you look up Bigfoot hunters, most likely a lot of them are going to be roaming around the Redwoods of Northern California looking for them.
Gotcha. And now there's the famous sort of footage of Bigfoot sort of walking, doing that quick take to camera. What do you know about that film?
So that is known as the Patterson-Gimlin film. It was filmed by Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson in 1967. That is, it stands today as what Bigfoot experts call the most comprehensive, the best looking video of Bigfoot that exists, right? Because it became so popular and it fueled so many people visiting the area. That was filmed in Willow Creek in Humboldt County there, which is a very remote, very small town in Humboldt County. It is now home to the Bigfoot Museum. So that film over the last 50, 60 years has spurred, Bigfoot tourism. But again, also there's sightings, a lot of sightings in the area today. Some people have said that it is fake, but it's unsubstantiated. The Patterson, who filmed it, still maintains its authenticity today.
Where do you stand on it? Do you think real, fake? not willing to take a position?
I'm optimistic. I'm
Uh huh.
optimistic. I love the story, and I certainly think there are things in this world that I can't explain or that I don't know about. So why judge people for their beliefs, right? I say that's the same thing about Lemurians. Believe whatever you want. I think it's a cool story, and yeah, and also the area. There's this stretch of highway on 96. They've now called the Bigfoot Highway. There's this beautiful trail up throughout the region that goes 360 miles. They call it the Bigfoot Scenic Trail. So the legends and the sightings have certainly fueled this this need to learn more and to sort of see the area where quote unquote Bigfoot lives.
Gotcha. Good to know. Are there any other local legends other than Bigfoot and the Lemurians that you've covered or that you want to cover over at Active NorCal?
How much time do you have?
I mean, we got a little time.
There's plenty, and in terms of Mount Shasta, and I think this sort of fits with the Lemurian narrative is aliens, right? So a lot of people believe that aliens live in the mountain, and that's the lenticular cloud portion of it. So that's always interesting to me. Now, as a society, we're seeing more and more UFO sightings, and a lot of those occur around Mount Shasta. I see them online. I never know what's real and what's not. But certainly there's a lot of lore around UFOs around Mount Shasta. Also, you get down further south to Lake Tahoe. There's plenty of great legends. Tahoe Tessie comes to mind.
Okay.
Tessie famously sounds like Loch Ness, like Nessie.
It sure
And
does.
it's Tahoe's version of the Loch Ness monster. You can go online. There's pictures of it. Lake Tahoe is famously deep, right? It's 1.5 miles to the bottom. So really, we've never explored the bottom, the true bottom of the deepest part of the lake.
Incredible. Zach, I mean, this has been a blast. I love the looks of everything about your part of the world. I will leave it up to our audience to decide what we've talked about as urban legend or maybe something else. But thank you so much for joining us here on California Now.
Thank you for having me, Josh. And one of these days, we're going to get you up here to show you what all the fuss is about.
The year is 1972. It's the middle of the night. A young recruit sits in the guard booth at the 29 Palms Marine Corps training base in California's Mojave Desert. The shift's been quiet. It's pitch black outside. Suddenly, he hears footsteps outside the booth. They're close. The guard grabs his sidearm and a flashlight and steps tentatively outside into the dark desert night. The next morning, the relief shift finds him passed out in the sand near the booth, sidearm bent like a paperclip. There are no footprints except the ones he made when he left the booth. That's the first known sighting of what many call the Yucca Man, a mysterious figure said to haunt the California desert at night. Yucca Man is one of a handful of famous legends in this unique part of the Golden State. My next guest has studied Yucca Man, UFO sightings, and other desert myths extensively, and even had some strange encounters himself. Ken Layne is the host of the weekly radio show The Desert Oracle and author of the Desert Oracle Field Guide. Ken, the voice of the desert, welcome to California Now. We are thrilled to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me. Good to see you.
Absolute pleasure. I've been listening to your podcast. I love the desert. I've lived in Los Angeles for about coming on 25 years now, and every time I go out there, it's a different experience. I love your part of the world, and I love the stuff that you write about. And in terms of setting the scene, I don't think we can talk about Yucca Man right off the bat without talking about the landscape first. So can you describe the Mojave to us? Like, what does life look like out there?
Oh, sure. Well, there were different parts of the Mojave.
Yeah, it's giant. It's enormous.
It's very big, It
Yep.
is actually the smallest of the 5 American deserts.
Oh, wow.
Most of the Mojave is in California, so it's sort of our place. There are little bits that go into Nevada, Arizona, and a little corner of Utah. In California, you have the full range from the high desert with mountains with big Joshua trees, our big yucca trees. You get snow in the winter, not a lot, but you get some. It's very beautiful in the snow. And then as you go down to the lower elevations, you get less plants, less animals, more sand, and it gets much hotter. It gets much tougher to exist. So almost everything in the summer, you don't see anything going around except for the ravens. They like it.
Gotcha. Now, you did mention Joshua trees. My name's Josh. It's not Joshua, even on the birth certificate. I've never felt any jealousy to the name Joshua until the first time I drove out to the desert and saw these trees. Are they trees? Are they cactuses? What can you tell us about them?
We use tree because it's a thing with a trunk and branches and it grows.
Okay.
You'll see the big Mojave yucca, which is wider around and not as tall. And that's what our Yucca Man is named after. Sort of burly, maybe 8-9 feet tall at most. And the Joshua tree is thinner, is taller. Its range is bigger. You can see them all the way up to the edge of Death Valley. They say they're part of the lily family, but I mean, I don't know how much that helps anybody.
Yeah, maybe not that much. They certainly don't look like lilies. They don't say lily to me,
no.
but one of the greatest legends of the desert is Yucca Man. So what exactly is Yucca Man supposed to be?
Yucca Man is one name for a phenomenon that has been experienced all over the West. You can broaden it to say all over the world, really, in wilderness areas and forest and wildlands and desolate places. Well, the description of Yucca Man that we have around here, 8 feet tall, almost colorless. So not so much brown or black as just kind of colorless, almost like a cutout.
Uh-huh. That blends into the landscape?
Some people have said they weren't even aware they were seeing something like that until they saw the silhouette moving over the stars.
Okay.
Glowing red eyes,
Okay.
a terrible roar,
All right.
and a absolutely disgusting stench.
Well, so it sounds like if you encounter Yucca Man, you know you've encountered Yucca Man.
It depends. You might have wandered onto somebody's homestead, and found someone who doesn't want to be bothered. So you have to be careful.
Yeah,
But
someone who doesn't want to be bothered, who smells terrible, red
yeah,
eyes, very tall.
and is screeching at you and is 8 feet tall. So really, whether it's Yucca Man or not, who cares? Just go the other way.
Gotcha. Now, these Sasquatch type myths exist all over the world in different cultures, different climates. And what makes Yucca Man unique? Like, what does he have going on that Bigfoot doesn't?
Most of these sort of what the paranormal writer John Keel, who wrote the Mothman Prophecies, which became a movie about 25 years ago, I think, he described all of these sorts of things as BHM, big hairy monsters. So that's what they have in common.
Yeah, good classification.
It covers all the bases.
It really does.
For instance, down in Anza-Borrego State Park, that's the Colorado Desert, about 2 hours south of where I am in Joshua Tree.
Gotcha.
In Borrego, during the gold rush down there, they had a creature that took on the name, because of the local newspaper, the Borrego Sandman. Now, this one, color-wise, was a little different. It still had the terrible stench, massive size, red, evil eyes, but it mixed in with the background of the sand and the sort of grayish sand brown color of the mountains and the landscape down there. So that was the Borrego Sandman. Up the hill in Warner Springs, at a place called Dead Man's Hole, where about 24 people traveling the Butterfield stage route were found strangled to death around the hole. This is in the late 1800s into the early 1900s. They called that one the missing link.
Oh, classic.
The name, the descriptors sort of match the historical era where they came up, where they were first reported, and then the environment that they're in.
Now, do you think that that this is, in all likelihood, someone just in the middle of the night mistaking a Joshua tree or some yucca tree for a beast? Or do you think, have you encountered anyone who has met the Yucca Man, who has crossed paths with? Have you?
Well, to your first question, a fun thing that they do over at the Marine Corps 29 Palms Combat Training Base, the Desert Combat Training Base, which major facility used in prep for both Gulf Wars, Afghanistan, etc., still used that way today, is when a fresh recruit would get there, they'd take him out for kind of a hazing, walk him around, and somebody, you know what a ghillie suit is? There's these sort of long, fringed camouflage suits that hunters and special forces sometimes.
Oh, yeah,
use.
yeah.
So you basically just melt into the landscape, especially if there's some vegetation around that will hide a person. They'll have somebody in one of those hiding out in the yucca trees, and then bring this poor 18-year-old from the southeast or something who's never seen anything like the desert, and this guy will jump out and run him back to the barracks.
This is how we're getting our best and brightest.
Listen,
America's fighting force ready. I guess you have to be prepared for anything.
You got to prepare.
Yeah.
As far as whether I've seen a Yucca Man, no, I don't think very many people have seen a Yucca Man, and it's a rare thing. That's why people still go frame by frame over the film clip of supposed Sasquatch from Northern California from 50 years ago now, 55 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't happen a lot. So they're not casually walking around. They're not hanging around the Joshua Tree Saloon.
Gotcha.
Signing autographs.
Is there a certain amount of sort of Yucca Man tourism in the area? Are there tours, or are there any sort of museums the way there are for Bigfoot in Northern California?
There are not, and I think the reason why is because it's been a fairly localized phenomenon. It's one of the reasons I did a big chapter in the Desert Oracle book about it, because you'd hear a little here and there. I'd find something in old newspaper clippings, old historical society newsletters, but it didn't have that sort of name brand recognition. And we know branding is very important in this world.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We do have a local music festival that started around then. It's called the Yucca Man Shakedown.
Oh, well, there you go. Branding's picking up for Yucca Man.
So a little bit, and you can buy, now there's a sticker that's made by our local gift store, Coyote Corner. So they have a little Yucca Man sticker. I really failed to get in on the merch there.
Well, it sounds like there's still time, Ken.
Man, I'm going to have to wait for the next round.
Well, let's move on to another very famous desert legend, and that is unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. These days, they're technically called unidentified anomalous phenomenon, but
that's the UAP.
Yeah, it's UFOs. I'm going to still call them UFOs. That's what we're doing over here in California now. But talking about these UFOs, when you're talking about UFOs in the California desert, what exactly are you talking about? Like, are these the old classic flying saucers? Are these little green men? Is it something else? There are a lot of sightings out there.
Yeah. So our archetype of the sort of 1950s flying saucer is based on things that a supposed UFO contactee named George Adamski had in the California desert. And this is what you think if you think of like a retro flying saucer. It's a sort of disc shape, like two plates together, or like an old hubcap cover, that kind of thing.
Oh, sure.
Sort of area that rises in the center, sometimes from the bottom, sometimes there are lights, sometimes there aren't. So that is the sort of standard typical flying saucer. That is from a California desert sighting, and supposedly some photographs. George Adamski had his first UFO sighting when he was working at a cafe at the base of Mount Palomar in October. I think it was October 9th, 1946. And this was the first UFO wave. People saw them all over Southern California. Beyond the sort of mechanical looking thing, the most common sort of UFO is going to be mysterious lights that are dancing around. There are
Uh-huh.
places where they're known to appear. For instance, Marfa, Texas has the famous Marfa lights. We have a lot of those in California. They aren't as well known. There are orange globes that appear somewhat routinely over the White Mountains up in far eastern California, north of Bishop in the Eastern Sierra.
I listened to in one episode of the Desert Oracle. You had an encounter at one point with some lights that came up behind your car. Can you tell us about that?
You're referring to something that happened in the Mojave on Amboy Road. I had gone up to Death Valley that year to see the super bloom, spring of 2015, and I wanted to stay the night. And usually, you can find a motel in Pahrump or Baker or something like that. Everything was filled up because they were having this police relay run, and I was about 3 hours from home. Okay, what the hell? I'll just drive home. It's a pretty night. So I drove back through Mojave National Preserve and drove through Amboy, which is an old sort of ghost town. There's still a shop there that's open. Used to be a hotel, travel center before the interstate skipped them. If you're going south from Amboy towards Joshua Tree National Park, it's a long, slow grade that goes up to the Sheephole Mountains. And I'm just cruising up this grade. You go through some dry lake areas, and I see some lights behind me in the mirror, and then they're coming up really fast. So I slow down, and I'm now going the speed limit is fine. I always go the speed. I've never gone over the speed limit.
Yeah, I've never heard anything else about you. Always, yeah.
The lights come right up and they're blinding, and I get annoyed. I think we're on an empty road. You can see miles ahead.
Sure. Why don't they just pass you?
Just pass. Yeah. What do you want me to do? And there's no shoulder on this road because it's a 2-lane desert road. So I slow down and I slow down and I slow down. I'm like, go, go. And finally I stop. And I look behind me, and the two lights are sitting there, and they retreat. And they keep going, but now backing up at ridiculous speed. I watch them go all the way down the grade.
Do you hear it? Did it make any sound when it was backing up, or just?
By the time I got out, I turned off the engine, turned off the radio, got out of the car. By that point, it was far away, like miles away in seconds. And no, there wasn't a sound.
Wow.
I get back in the car and I keep driving, and I was somewhere around Wonder Valley when it struck me, wait, that wasn't a car. Cars can't go. And so I got home, I got the Google Maps out. I'm like, how far was that? It's like 8 miles down the grade. And it just zipped away and disappeared.
Wow.
We did a campfire story event a couple years after that at Amboy Crater, which is nearby there. And it was for the 25th anniversary of the California Desert Protection Act, which greatly expanded Death Valley National Park, Joshua Tree, changed them both from monuments to national parks. So we had all the rangers and people who contribute to the Mojave Desert Land Trust, and et cetera, and fans of the show, et cetera, all sitting around a big campfire in the middle of nowhere, totally dark out. So I'm telling scary stories, and I tell that story. Afterwards, when we're picking up and I'm talking to people, this guy comes up and he says, that happened to me.
No.
I'm like, that happened to you. Where did it happen? And he said, Kelbaker Road. That's the road that comes out of Mojave National Preserve, down under the interstate, and then over to Amboy. So not the same stretch of road, but the same area.
That's crazy. That has to be pretty unsettling. Did you sleep well that night?
Oh, I always sleep well.
Oh, well, good for you. I would be spinning.
If you go out alone into these sorts of places, you're much more likely to have oddball experiences that you're probably not going to have, at the farmer's market on a busy Saturday in Los Angeles or something. It's just the nature of odd things.
So where in California, if I want to learn more about UFOs, where can I go? I mean, I feel like there's no shortage of alien themed attractions.
In the Mojave, an interesting place to go is called the Integratron.
Oh yes, I've never been, and I know about it. I've read about it. I've watched you in an episode of Ancient Aliens talking about it.
Oh yeah.
It seems like a fascinating place. Tell us about the Integratron.
So George Van Tassel was the builder of it. George Van Tassel worked for Howard Hughes Aircraft in, I believe, El Segundo. And he met a guy who lived at a place called Giant Rock. And the guy says, hey, I've got an airstrip out there. Come visit me. He comes and visits. The guy ends up exploding. He blows up because he gets into it with the sheriffs, and they come, and he's a miner, and all of his furniture is made out of boxes of dynamite. It's like a
wow,
like a Roadrunner and Coyote cartoon.
Yeah, ill-advised.
Yeah. And so he comes out supposedly shooting, they say, and they start shooting, and it blows up. And George Van Tassel hears about this, and he says, well, I'll go move under there. So a normal sort of reaction when you hear that your
free rock
got blown up. Yeah, free rock. And they had like a 1,800 square foot apartment dug out under this giant boulder. It's 5 stories tall or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And he started having supernatural experiences there. And he said he was visited by these tall Nordic aliens, kind of long heads and wore robes, very 50s sci-fi sort of looking things. And they told him to build a domed building in the desert there, not using any nails or any metal fasteners, just all doweled wood. And so he did over the course of 15, 20 years or so. He worked on it. And what he lived off during that time is he would have UFO meetups at Giant Rock. And thousands of people went to these. I think the largest crowd they had was 11 or 12,000 people. Van Tassel gets his building made. He says that it's a machine that will make you live for a long time, a longevity device.
Okay.
It's got magnetic this, and it was something that spun, and it was, I don't think it really lined up with science too much, but it was, it would have been a big success, I think, had he finished it and opened it to the public. Instead, he died. And so the rumor was that some unknown agency came and took the secret part that would make people live forever, which is yet to be identified. But you go into the place, it's very beautiful. It's done very nice. It's kind of like a modern cathedral, really. It's beautiful white plaster dome on the outside. Inside is just beautiful redwood. If you go, you have to have a reservation to get inside because they're only open.
That's why I haven't been. I've never had a reservation. Yeah.
But if you're around, you can go and go onto the ground, see it from the outside. Of course, you're allowed in the gift store, you know.
Of course. Yeah. But I feel like I have friends who have like done sound baths in the Integratron. If you're heading out to the desert, it certainly seems like something worth looking up and making a reservation for, because it's such a unique structure with this incredible history behind it.
And there's interesting stuff all around there. So Giant Rock is a short drive up a dirt road from there. We have kind of our little fancy restaurant in the desert is nearby, La Copine.
Okay.
There's Sand to Snow National Monument, which is relatively new. From the San Bernardino Mountains down into the Mojave, starts right behind there. So a lot of sort of undisturbed wilderness is a great place to go. And beautiful skies at night. And even if you don't, see space aliens and a traditional UFO or something, you almost always see things that you're not going to see at home. You can see the space station going by, satellites.
Yeah. I do try to time my trips to the desert with almost little or no moon, because with the big moon, the stars get washed out. And if you're looking at a calendar, if you're going to go camping, I sort of Jumbo Rocks is my favorite campground in Joshua Tree. I just think the rock structures around there, the rock formations rather, are beautiful, and sort of at sunset, those are incredible. And then when the stars come out at night, it feels like you're on another planet.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful out there. And that's the one place where there's a supposed picture of Yucca Man is Jumbo Rocks.
Oh wow. Well, that's my spot. So I'll definitely keep an eye.
Keep an eye on the ridge of rocks behind the campground.
Yeah, I've been there. I haven't seen him, but definitely something worth keeping an eye out for. Ken, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much. The voice of the desert oracle himself. Thank you. Ken Layne is the founder and host of the Desert Oracle radio show and author of the Desert Oracle Field Guide. To listen to the show or get the field guide, visit desertoracle.com. Thank you, Ken, so much.
Thank you.
All right, that's it for this episode of California Now. Thanks for joining us. We're also not just an audio podcast anymore. We do video now, too. So check out our conversations on YouTube and on Visit California's social media channels. And don't forget, you can find more great travel tips and inspiration for your next Golden State adventure at visitcalifornia.com. This podcast is produced by Visit California. I'm your host and executive producer, Josh Meyers. Our producer is Kate Eppelboim. Jessica Marshall is our technical lead. Janae Shaw is our editorial director. Our theme song is by Stefan Carlin. You can find our show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.